We got a lot of stuff going on here this week in mixed martial arts. I say that every single week. One of the top stories that I saw that I was by far the most excited about was the fact that Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson were, I guess they're going to fight, and that's going to decide the next title shot, basically.
Right.
Dana White, he seems a little irritable lately when he talks about last-minute replacements and things like that. And although he did sound irritable, he did bring up a good point in that you have to look at what happened to Rashad Evans. When you're on the shelf, you have an opportunity to fight, and for whatever reason it doesn't come to fruition. Next thing you know, you might find yourself waiting a year and a half before the next shot comes, if it even comes at all. So he says, hey, we're done with this. This is what's going to happen. Winner gets a shot. I want to get your guys' opinion initially. I'll start with you, Jason. What do you think about this fight? Do you have any early predictions? Is it intriguing for you? I mean, how do you feel about that?
I'm very excited for the fight, actually. I think it's going to be a really good fight. Machida, my early prediction is Machida, I think, is going to take it. With Dan Henderson, of course, you can never count him out.
I know. It's tough.
I like the fact that they're putting these two up against each other to fight for the title next. I really think that it's a great idea, and it's a fight that all the fans are going to enjoy, that's for sure.
Yeah, very interesting fight. Ralph, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's a very decisive way to make a fight. It's the way it should be. Considering everything that's happened with John Jones and Dan Henderson being hurt, that puts him out a couple weeks or months rather. And you got Machida out here who just passed on the title shot. I wonder if he's actually hoping that John Jones loses, so he doesn't have to go against him and then have to get slept out again. So
it's an interesting idea.
You got Dan Henderson. He's a big, heavy-fisted guy. He's definitely. I'm wondering if Lyoto's how he's gonna want to fight that, and how Dan Henderson's gonna want to incorporate that big right hand that he loves to throw.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too, because I find myself thinking about the stylistic part of it, and that obviously it's really hard for anybody to make an early prediction, but stylistically, I mean, yeah, you got to wonder where Dan Henderson's going to find. He's going to try and find a home for that right hand, obviously. Will it happen? That's the X factor. Will he land it? Will he not land it? For me, that's going to be what decides the fight. I don't think he's going to be able to tie Lyoto up in a clinch. And then again, Dan Henderson's susceptible to straight combinations, and that's what Lyoto throws best with knockout power. So very intriguing matchup. I think at this point in time they're probably perfectly matched. I mean, those guys are arguably number 1 and 2 contender for that shot at 205. And on top of that, if you don't have this fight happen right now, then with Dan Henderson waiting for the next title shot, I mean, you've got him not fighting for what is it, a year and a half or better?
He's not a young guy anymore either.
41.
Yeah, he's got to get it while the getting's good, because in a couple of years he might not be able to fight. He might not be able to fight at the same level anyways.
Absolutely, and history has shown the I'm a big believer in ring rust, but it hasn't shown very useful for Dan Henderson. The last time he had a long layoff, of course, he lost to Jake Shields at 185. I mean, people blame the weight cut, they blame this and that, but I can't help but to think that ring rust had a small part in that, don't you?
Right, it had to have something to do with that. I agree with you.
I would definitely like to see that fight again when Dan Henderson doesn't have that ring rust on him, because I believe that he can beat Jake Shields
I think he can too, and you know what? Nobody talks about that first round. I mean, Jake Shields, he looked scared to death. I mean, he was one shot away from going to sleep. So, I'm not trying to be a Dan Henderson mark or anything like that. I'm just calling it like I see it. You know what? On another note, just before we kick this story, the UFC always gives people the fights they want to see, and that's what I love. This is a great example of that. We're not going to have guys sitting on the shelf. We're going to make them fight. And
exactly.
We're going to answer all the questions. So I don't think you can ask for much more than that.